First up, we've got Hellboy 2019, starring David Harbour and Millard Jovovich, directed by Neil Marshall. Let me just say that if this movie is what you're looking for, then this is the movie for you, no question about it. Hellboy 2019 starts with a lot of backstory and what filmmaking experts call narration. You know, for instance, as we watch it with our eyes, the narrator will say, quote, "Arthur severed the Blood Queen's head." It's like play-by-play. He literally describes everything that is happening right there on the screen. And this goes on for like 3 minutes. And for some reason, it was all cut together like a YouTube video. I don't know why. Must be a thing kids are into. As I kept watching, it became obvious that the people in Hellboy's universe like to state facts at each other. It's like the dialogue is a lot of, "I want this," "the dog is brown," and it's just walls of dialogue. Everyone talks all the time. And, you know, some believe that movies are largely a visual art, but the makers of Hellboy 2019 said, "No, sir. No, ma'am. That's not what this movie's going to be." Hellboy 2019 is not a movie about characters experiencing things, which the audience could then experience through empathy, or sometimes it's called mirror neurons, I think. Instead, it's a bunch of imaginary people standing around or running around, reciting facts. Later on in the movie, there are even some monks who took a vow of silence, and I noticed that even they would write loud dialogue on handheld chalkboards. Hellboy himself makes a lot of dry jokes, and I get what the writers were going for. By comparison, there's a Netflix movie called The Gray Man that I saw the other day, and I found Gosling's dry jokes or witty comments to land a lot better than the jokes in this Hellboy movie. Now, I don't know the origin of that sort of thing, those little comments, but you can find some dang good ones in The Big Sleep from 1945. In that old film, a woman meets with a detective played by Humphrey Bogart, and he walks into the room, and he shows up, he's all sweaty, and he's got like a handkerchief, he's wiping his neck, and she says, "My, you're a mess, aren't you?" And he responds, "Oh, I'm not very tall either. Next time I'll come on stilts, wear a white tie, and carry a tennis racket." For some reason, the woman doesn't react to his bizarre statement, and the conversation just continues. And I, of course, also have no idea what he's talking about, but both versions of The Big Sleep are full of those witty detective comments like that. By the way, if anyone listening knows the original source of that style of dialogue, let me know. It could have actually been from the books of Raymond Chandler, which the film was based on, and I've never read any of his books, so I wouldn't know. You can also find that kind of stuff all over Bruce Willis movies, too. It's become like a necessary ingredient to anything that has a lot of action. You know, like Hawkeye and Scarlett Johansson having a clever conversation in the middle of a battle against a bunch of aliens coming down from the sky. There's probably a term for it, maybe like deadpan snarker or something like that. As I said, in this reboot, Hellboy is played by David Harbour, and you may know him as the police chief from Stranger Things. But I was skeptical that Ron Perlman could ever be replaced with another Hellboy actor. I thought, Ron Perlman is just so perfect as Hellboy, you can't mess with it. But David Harbour actually did a good job. I thought he had more of a Lebowski take on the character, coincidentally, and he almost resembled like a beat-up, sweaty metal musician. The character makeup was definitely well executed, so there was no complaints there. Another notable actor was Troy James. I had to look that one up. He's a contortionist who performed the body acting of the character Baba Yaga, and that was pretty wild. It's another one of those situations where it's hard to cast anyone else as that character. You've got to have just the right person with that wild contortionist talent to do that. And also, considering it was a male playing a female, it was totally convincing. And I thought Baba Yaga and her hut were cool imagery and wish we could have spent more time there. As far as the plot goes, this is another movie about the end of the world. Because these days, the stakes always have to be the end of the world. About 20 minutes in, we get another voiceover narrated exposition scene. And whenever I see this sort of thing, a red flag goes off. In general, I think movies should stay like in the here and now of the narrative. And that if you have to spend so much time with backstory, maybe you are actually making the wrong movie. But if you love being taken out of the moment and seeing other times and places, this is the movie for you. At some point, there was a Nazi character who had big red and blue 3D glasses. And I thought that was a really cool character design. I didn't catch the significance of that character, and I honestly don't remember what Nazis had to do with the story. But hey, Nazis were there for sure. I do believe I saw them. And as the movie goes on, I'm sitting there thinking, man, why is there so much narration? At one point, I actually wondered, do I accidentally have the audio description turned on my TV? You ever watch a movie with audio description? Because that's an experience. But then again, everything is an experience except for the occasional non-experience. Felt like the makers of this movie didn't let the scenes breathe for a moment. Like, just let us be there. Take it in. Just let us feel some suspense rather than being told what's happening all the time. I made a note here that at 22 minutes in, we're still caught up in the backstory. That's a pretty significant amount of backstory. That's like a prequel by itself. But that's not to say that I don't appreciate a non-linear narrative. It just wasn't working for me here. Or maybe I was watching the movie backwards. I don't know what was going on. I thought some of the musical choices were weird. The score was by Benjamin Wallfisch. And there's a scene where some characters go out on a hunt in the wilderness on horseback, and suddenly ska music starts playing. And I don't know how that artistic choice was made, but then again, ska music can really erupt anywhere at any time. I don't know that ska music can really be trusted because of that. In another scene, there was a moment of heavy metal music that blasts out, and it kind of jumped out at me as maybe inappropriate for the score and distracted me from what I was watching. I'm like, why am I hearing heavy metal music all of a sudden? I don't think of heavy metal music as idiomatic to film scoring, that's for sure. So that took me out of the moment. So just to be sure I wasn't crazy, I looked up the score on Apple Music, and sure enough, I was crazy. It's actually full of heavy industrial metal, like screeching, distorted electronic insanity. It's that kind of thing that will give me a panic attack and running out of the theater. And looking a little deeper, I learned that Benjamin Wallfisch worked on Blade Runner 2049, It, Hidden Figures, Shazam, which was an insane score, Batman vs. Superman. So it's kind of crazy that I had never heard of him before. A factoid on Wikipedia says his films have made over $2.5 billion, I'm assuming, in worldwide box office receipts. So, hey, who am I to complain about what a famous film score dude is doing? Here's one thing in this movie that I thought was really cool. There's a scene where Hellboy is fighting a bunch of giants. Sorry about the spoiler, but I was kind of blown away by the animation and the character designs because I've never seen medieval giants fighting like that. They had so many grotesque features and there were so many bad decisions made by the giants, which definitely showed their low intelligence. And anyway, I thought the scene really worked. It had striking cinematography too. The camera exaggerated their features and their movement. And lots of the shots are continuous, meaning there were not many changes of camera angles and edits. Like the camera would flow around the characters, pushing in and out on the action. I just thought it was a well-done scene, and I could have watched a whole movie about Hellboy versus the Giants. Another strong point of this movie was the fight choreography, because the fight scenes were what I'd call properly messy. In the real world, fighting isn't such a clean acrobatic dance. People will grab each other and struggle and get tired and trip over things and knock things over. And there were some cool moments of that here, but not as many as you would see in Daredevil on Netflix. Now, those fights were very brutal. Anyway, I give this movie 3.5 out of 5 stars. A bit better than average for my own personal tastes.